Hi, and welcome to the Poultry Nerds podcast. I'm Carrie Blackman, and I'm here with my co-host for the show, Jennifer Bryant, and we're here to help you figure out how to raise the healthiest, happiest, and highest quality birds possible.
Welcome, Poultry Nerds. We're here today with Ross Harrington, and he raises Buff Orpingtons. So welcome, Ross. How are you?
Pretty good. Thank you.
How long have you been raising Buff Orpingtons? And
I got pretty serious with the buffs in the last 5 years. I've always had some running around, but I doubled down about 5 years ago and really started focusing on them and got rid of some other stuff. So they could be the main focus chicken wise.
Yeah, you can only focus on a couple things at a time, can't you?
Chickens for sure. They take up a lot of space.
Yeah. We try to help people get started with birds. And when I tell people that it takes so much space to just breed well, I don't know that they really understand. So tell us how many breeding groups you have and how much space they take up.
I try to run 3 breeding groups. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way. It ends up being a little bit more, a little bit less. I like to put 1 male over 2 to 4 females, and I mainly just track off of the males. All the females are usually pretty closely related, and then just try to hatch as many as I can out of each pen.
Mm-hmm.
Some years it's great, some years it's not. Just depends on the gods.
Depends on the weather, depends on your time,
Yeah.
incubators,
Your
and
luck.
the outages.
Oh gosh, yeah. And we live down here in Tornado Alley, so that's about the time that we're trying to hatch. And sometimes you'll have one rip through and won't have power for a little while.
Yeah. So your birds, so let's explain the difference between standard bred and utility birds.
Yeah, I would say the utility birds are great for people just looking for something pretty in their backyard. They generally don't have the size, the body capacity, the quality of feather that we're looking for in something that we would breed to a standard. And in the standard Orpingtons, I think, especially in the buffs, the biggest thing is, of course, size, but we also want them to have the feather quality. And that's the biggest issue in my buffs is the females don't always have that nice, wide, thick feather, but they are overall just a much larger, heavier bird. And I would say they're maybe not as productive as your utility type strains.
Yeah, if you're just looking for egg layers, I would not get birds from us.
No, you'll be so disappointed.
No, because I have some reds and I have some standard reds, and my production reds lay significantly more eggs than my standard reds.
Yeah, and that seems to be the common theme. Those production birds they're bred to produce, and they're bred to produce eggs.
Yep. And then the size difference, I still have 2 of my original hatchery birds out there. They've got to be 9-10 years old at this point. But they just keep clocking along. They're still laying eggs too. But they're probably 4, maybe 5 pounds.
Yeah, they're not real big, but they do live a long time, those production birds. They live forever.
And then the standard hens, they're going to be more like 8 to 10 pounds, right?
Ideally, yeah. 10 pounds for a female is probably going to be a little bit too heavy, but I don't see many people bringing scales, so I wouldn't worry too much about weight.
We're not going to get into that conversation.
If your buff is a little fluffy, but she looks pretty, you'll be all right.
It'll be just fine.
I hear a lot about the skirt of the bird. So can you explain to people what we're talking about?
Yeah, so that skirt is what's covering the hawk, and ideally we don't want it to cover the shank, but sometimes it does. That skirt is going to just come right around there about the hawk, and it is to cover the hawk, but it is not supposed to cover the shank in full. It does sometimes. It's the least of my concerns.
But there is a rule, a 2-inch rule, right?
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not.
Yeah. It's like those scales. They're not walking around with the tape measure either.
Depends on the judge.
That's right.
All right. Let's see. Now, Orpingtons come in bantam and large. So both of us raise large fowl.
Yes.
Have you seen the little banning Orpingtons?
Yeah. A friend of mine actually just picked up some Bantam Buffs and they're pretty cool. They look great.
But they're so tiny.
Are they smaller than the production ones?
Yeah. They're smaller, but they're really wide and they feel like a bowling ball in your hand.
If you can't see
Okay.
their feet, they almost look like a cochin.
A little bit.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see. So we both raise Buff, and they have a whitish, pinkish skin. Do all the Orpington plumage colors have white, pink skin?
They're supposed to have white skin. And then, of course, in the blacks, you'll have melanizer gene at play, but they're to have white skin too. But their shanks and their beaks are going to be black.
Mm-hmm. And a single comb.
Single comb, 5 points,
Mm-hmm.
medium size.
A light brown egg.
Yeah. Do yours not lay pink eggs? Mine lay pink eggs.
No, I don't have Easter eggers.
Ah,
I knew that was coming.
No,
That's
I
fair.
get light brown eggs. You get pink eggs, huh?
yeah. I'll just send you a picture. Mine are pink.
Interesting. Now, yours
Consistently?
are-
Consistently
we have two
pink.
different lines of birds.
That's cool.
Yours are fluffier than mine. How about let's talk about the differences between the standard-bred and the English Orpingtons. And
Yeah. So,
argument there.
of course, they're all under the English class. And if you want an English looking bird, then you'll have to breed it to the English standard. But for the American standard, they're not supposed to be as fluffy, as high tailed. The main thing is those English type birds have really high tails and they're just really fluffy. The American birds, the American Orpington is going to be a tighter feathered bird, a little longer backed and a much lower tail. Those are the main differences.
Yep. And your temperament. Now, I have never had a mean Orpington. Have you?
Never.
No,
They require very little handling to be tame.
yeah.
I think they hatch tame, honestly.
Yeah, they're pretty much big babies.
Yeah.
When you're a chicken and you weigh 10 pounds, you really can't move
You're not
around
moving
fast
much.
enough to be aggressive.
No, they're never mean. I don't have any issues with picking as babies or anything. They're just really docile birds.
Mm-hmm. So one of my big cockbirds, he's probably, I haven't weighed him in a while, but last time I did, he was almost 14 pounds. And he's about as big as, he's bigger than some of my turkey hens. And my 4-year-old grandson was helping me feed one day, and he was going in and out of all of the coops, grabbing the water buckets for me. And I told him, of course, the cochins, I have the 2 cockbirds, and the cochins are kind of jerks, and so he doesn't go in there. And so he was going and he was running around the corner, and JC is the big cockbird, and he was standing there, and he's about eye level with Derek, and Derek just comes to a complete stop and just looks at him through the gate, like eye to eye with JC, and he just turned around and he goes, "This one's all yours, Grandma. I ain't going in there."
It's hilarious.
That's funny.
Yeah, but they're big birds, but
They are
I had
big.
no problem sending him in there because he wouldn't hurt him at all.
Yeah, they're so tame. And I really think that Orpingtons are a great bird for kids, for people just wanting to get into the hobby, or even just backyard people. They're really easygoing.
So let's talk about some defects and like what you look for. Do you start culling straight out of the hatcher, straight out of the brooder? When do you start?
I don't, unless they have sprigs, I don't cull anything until it's about 6 months old. Obviously, sprigs, crooked toes, that's all going to get culled pretty early, but everything else, they get to grow up. And then at 6 months, I'll start to evaluate type, color, stuff like that.
Okay, so explain sprigs to people who don't know what they are and stuff.
So sprig sometimes is so small, you have to feel it. So if you run your hands down each side of their cone, anything that's sticking out is basically what I consider a sprig. Some of them are big, very visible, and some of them are super tiny.
And a stub?
Stubs are going to be on their feet or in between their toes. It's just a feather or multiple feathers, clusters of feathers, anything like that. I generally don't tolerate.
Yeah, those don't, especially the sprigs. Definitely just cull those out because that is a huge genetic issue later down the road, right?
Yes, do not tolerate it.
Yeah. All right. And then at 6 months, what do you start looking for?
Length of back is something I've been trying to focus on more the past couple years, and a more forward breast in my males. My males don't have enough breast. They don't have enough back length. We're getting there, making some progress, but those are the main things at 6 months, is really looking at length of back and a big forward breast.
Because they're considered dual purpose. We eat them.
Mm-hmm.
They're egg layers. So you want them to be full in the chest.
Yes, want a big full breast. They're supposed to look good on a table or out in the yard.
Yeah, they're not these modern game birds that are like little Barbies standing there and put them on a shish kebab or something.
Nope.
Alexa, it's not a table jumper.
Huh?
Not a table jumper.
No. Oh, those little saramas?
Yeah.
Those are, my birds would eat those.
I like watching them at shows. I mean, because some of those people, they get really into that. And
they do get into it.
All right. How about feed? Do you do anything special for the Orpingtons?
No, everybody here eats the exact same thing. Luckily, my local feed store is now carrying Kalmbach, so I just switched to that, but everybody eats the same thing.
Since you just switched over to it, do you have any initial observation?
They love it. They really like the Kalmbach. I haven't had anybody turn, their cups are clean every day. They're finishing it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like it too. Let's see. What advice would you have for anybody wanting to get started breeding and showing?
If you want to get started breeding and showing, obviously buy a standard, read it, learn it, know it, try to create a mental image, talk to breeders who are consistently every year producing the type of bird that you are mentally picturing whenever you read the standard, and try to buy the best stock that you can afford. Really good Orpingtons are not cheap, and there's a reason they're not cheap, because it takes a lot to get them. Sorry, my computer has decided to change my lighting up. The best stock you can afford, and get it from a breeder who is consistently producing really top-notch birds. Ridgeview Farms, they sell really good Orpingtons every year, and they're consistently producing really good birds. That's what I would look for. If I was going to start with Orpingtons I would go look for somebody who is consistently producing the type of bird that you can mentally picture whenever you read the standards.
Now, how do you go about finding those people? That'll be the next question people ask.
Facebook is honestly, as much as we all like to hate it, it is the best way to find stuff. And then, of course, the Orpington Club, the United Orpington Club, has a breeders directory, and I think that's a fabulous resource as well.
Mm-hmm. Do you sell?
I have sold one pair of buffs since I started breeding them, and that's it. I cull hard. I cull really hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's the same with me. We just eat them. If somebody calls and says they want one, I'll say, I got this one here, take it or leave it because it's going in the pot if you're not taking it. But I don't advertise.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, it's just somebody wanting a big bird to increase their size of their stock that they have at home.
Yeah, and I think that's always important too, is just, it never hurts to ask. If you need something and somebody has it, the worst they're going to say is no.
And if we said, yeah, we'll call you back later, give me a month, don't hesitate to hit us back in a month because we probably forgot.
I have definitely forgotten.
Really,
please remind me.
That we forgot.
We don't keep lists. I tried lists years ago and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, and I'll sell hatching eggs if I've got something extra every now and then. And I think that's another great way to get started, especially if you can purchase out of the exact breeding pens they're breeding from. Okay, not everybody offers hatching eggs.
That leads me to another question. So do you trim in order to increase your fertility?
I do trim, yeah. About I just take my fist and then trim around it and make a hole about yay big.
And then you have to wait for the molt for that to grow back. Yep. All right. Orpingtons are easy because they're so docile. They're just there. They're so pretty. You don't really have to do a whole lot. So it doesn't really require a huge, long, drawn out conversation.
No, they're a really easy, straightforward breed. As long as you really pay attention to the details, you can't really go wrong with them.
No. Now we both raise buffs, and that's a color, not a breed, for everybody who will type that out. Orpingtons also come in black, white, blue.
Black, white, blue, and buff.
Yep, that's the APA standards, but you can get other colors like lavender, but they're not accepted.
Not recognized, and I honestly don't think there's enough people working on them to get them recognized. They have a feather shredding gene that is really...
Do you know anybody that has a lavender line that doesn't have the shredder gene? I don't either. Yeah.
Now, self-bullies are hard.
I don't know anybody either. All righty. Thanks for joining us today to talk about Orpingtons.
Absolutely. We can go in depth on them, but that's a pretty good brief overview.
Yes, that's exactly what we needed.
Yep.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this week. Before you go, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you can receive new episodes right when they are released. And they're released every week. Feel free to email us at poultrynerds@gmail.com to share your thoughts about the show. Until next time, poultry pals, keep clucking, keep learning, and keep it exciting. This is Carrie signing off from Poultry Nerds. Feathers up, everyone.